Good day. In this video, we're going to look at the compound increase problem. In this problem, quite a few things happen. And we're going to show you how you might want to use a timeline to put all this information out and order it. This is the formula that we use for compound increase. This is not a formal definition, just something I wrote. A is the P amount plus the interest. The P over there is the starting amount. I is a piece of the interest rate. N is the number of times you get interest. Please stop the video and read through this problem yourself. The problem says 55,000 Rand is invested for 10 years. The interest rate for the first 5 years is 8% per annum compounded annually. The interest rate is then increased to 12.5% per annum compounded quarterly for the next 2 years. Thereafter, it is decreased to 11% per annum compounded monthly for the remaining time. An amount of 8,000 was withdrawn 8 years after the investment was made. Calculate the value of the investment at the end of 10 years. I'm going to run through this problem, and at the end I'll show you how the timeline helped me to sort all this information out. Firstly, it says invest 55,000 for 5 years at a rate of 8% per annum compounded annually. I'm going to use a compound increase formula. I know what P is, that's the 55,000. I quickly work out what I and N is. I is the piece of interest I get every time I get interest. In this case, they said 8% per annum compounded annually. So it's 8 over 100 divided by 1 gives me either this or this way of writing this I. And I store it in A of my calculator. N is the number of times I'm going to get interest. Because it's annually again, I'm going to get interest 5 times. My N is 5. Put the 55,000 over here. And now we put in the I over here and the N over there. In the place of I can write either 2 over 25 or 0.08. In the place of N, we put a 5. Then we push this into our calculator. Then we get the answer. This money grew to over 5 years. In here is the 55,000 plus the interest occurred on this. Store that in one of our memories. I stored it in B. Please don't round off. We write ... behind our answer and do not round off. After 5 years, this is the amount that's in the bank. So now it changes. The interest rate increased to 12.5% per annum compounded quarterly for 2 years. So this money is now going to grow. Firstly, I work out what the I and the N is for this next period of 2 years. The I will be 12.5 over 100 divided by 4. Then you can write either this or this or this, but still store it in your C memory or any memory in your calculator. We're still going to use this compound increase formula. N will be 8. You will receive interest 8 times. It's for 2 years, and because it's quarterly, it's going to be 2 years and 4 times a year. We fill in the appropriate values for A, P, I, and N. A we don't know. P is the amount that we worked out previously. I is the value that we worked out here and stored in C. And N is the amount of times you're going to get interest in this 2 years, which is 8. Then use your calculator extensively. Type everything in. Do not make a mistake. Then the amount in the bank at the end of this next 2 years will be this amount. This will be this amount plus the interest you got 8 times over the 2 years. This you store in another memory. Remember, not to round off. That's why we put the 3 dots there. Next, the question said the interest rate decreased to 11% per annum compounded monthly for the remaining time. So there is 3 years remaining. Firstly, we worked out the value of I, that's 11 over 100 divided by 12. It's compounded monthly. You can write it like this, or this, but store it in another part of your calculator. In the E memory, I took it. Now this money that is in the bank will grow for a certain amount of time up until we have to take out the 8,000 Rand. Firstly, you fill in the I that you worked out over here. That is the piece of the rate that you are receiving every time. And you're going to grow it for 12 times, because that is 1 year to get to the end of 8 years before they take out the 8,000 Rand. Put all this info into your calculator up to there, and then you'll get this answer. Then you take your calculator and minus the 8,000 Rand that was withdrawn. Then you get this amount. Do not round off, and you store it in another memory. In this case, I stored it in F. This is where the timeline would have helped us not to get confused. Now this is the money in the bank after 8 years, right at the end of 8 years. Then we take this amount, we put it in the same formula, substitute your I that you worked out in here, and you will receive interest 24 times. So the money is still in the bank for 2 years, but it's compounded monthly. 2 years is 24 months. After you put all of this into your calculator, you'll get this amount. That is the value of the investment at the end of 10 years. Please stop the video and try and get your head around what happened here. If you really understood what happened here, you might now understand the shortcut that's up. You'll have to stop the video and try and understand what I'm going to say next. You could have taken the 55,000, compounded for the first period, and you get an answer in other words. Then you times it by this to compound it further for this period. And there's an answer the calculator is actually working out, and then you times it by this again. Then you get the final amount of compounding this to the end of 8 years. Then you minus the 8,000, and you have this amount at the beginning of the 9th year. Then you work out the final amount over the last 2 years. Very much the same as we did up here. And this will be the amount at the end of 10 years, which we will have in the bank. Please stop the video and get your brain around this. Now we're going to try and show you how this timeline could have helped you to keep all this information together. We set up this timeline before we start any calculations. Firstly, we draw a timeline for the full duration of this problem. From here, what you do first depends on you. You might want to draw dotted lines where all changes occur. The interest changed after 5 years, then it changed after 2 years, then money was withdrawn after a year, and then the problem finished after 10 years. You definitely don't have to write as much as we did. You might want to work out your I's of each compound period. The I over here, we stored in A. The I from there to there, we stored in C. And the I from there to there, we stored in E. Next, you might want to put in the money that was put in the beginning was 55,000. And after 8 years, 8,000 was withdrawn. Then you might want to put in the N for each period. Here, the interest was compounded yearly, so you got interest 5 times. Here, the interest was compounded quarterly for 2 years. That made the N 8. In this area over here, the interests were compounded monthly, but there was 1 year the money was in the bank before the 8,000 was taken out. After the 8,000 Rand were withdrawn from the amount, this is the amount that was left in the bank at the end of 8 years, the beginning of the 9th year. Then here, the interest were compounded 24 more times. And that would leave us with this as the final amount in the bank after 10 years. We're not going to go very much further with this. Here is the timeline. That part from there to there is up to there. Then we times by this, which happened there. Then that little break over there is over there. And we got to that answer over there after we minus the 8,000. That's where we got this. Then we took this amount again and grew it in that compound area there. Some people don't like timelines, then don't use it. Some people like it, use it. Maybe look at this video once or twice and then decide how you would go about answering these type of questions, and keep doing it the way you understand. Please indicate whether you liked or disliked the video and subscribe to the channel. If you run into any financial maths problem that you have trouble solving, you may send a clear WhatsApp photo of your problem to this number and a clear WhatsApp photo of where you tried it. Then we will try and help and send back an answer to you as soon as possible. Enjoy financial maths.